Welcome to the Roth Blueprint Revealed. This is an exclusive DMI University webinar, and I'm Glenn Setchfield, again, the Marketing VP with DMI. And today you're really in for a game-changing session, and I do mean that. I can't always, transparently say that, but I think in this case, I really feel that way. And this is led by Roth conversions expert Steve Hutchinson and our very own Tyrell Jensen, DMI's VP of Annuity Sales. So over the next hour, you're going to discover a proven 4-step system that top advisors use to simplify large ticket Roth conversions, convert smarter and faster, and close high net worth cases at point of sale without chasing unqualified leads or pitching generic products. As you probably know already, but in case you don't know, working with DMI gives you access to industry-leading systems like what we're going to talk about today, compliance software, scripts, training, and white glove support so you can confidently attract high net worth clients, execute Roth conversions seamlessly, and scale your business, all with back-end support. And it all lets you stay focused on serving your clients and not micromanaging logistics, right? So with all that said, I'd just like to thank Steve Hutchinson again for coming on, and Tyrell as well, and Maureen, who will be involved in putting up some surveys during the proceedings here, and then also manning the Q&A at the end. So, but as you have questions, please engage through the Q&A. And if we do get stuff that we feel is really relevant to the conversation, is going to help the conversation along, we want to be sure everybody gets the information they need. So we may, with Steve's help, get some questions answered during the presentation. But I'll hand it off to Tyrell for a few words, and then he can set up Steve a little bit.
Appreciate it, Glenn. Thank you. So first, I'm just really excited about this topic. Doing Roth conversions has been something I've been a huge proponent of for my entire career. I've been involved in helping my own clients do Roth conversions. I'll say, anytime I look at Roth conversions or talk to reps about doing Roth conversions, there's always a few hurdles to overcome. I get a little bit of pushback on, one, there's sometimes a bit of math and calculations to do. There's a lot of legwork to look at when you're trying to calculate this and determine the real benefit to the client, how we do it, where do we pull the funds from to be able to pay for it. So I'm really excited about this presentation today because I'm not going to steal too much of Steve's thunder, but it really solves a lot of those problems. It really makes this a very streamlined, easy process to be able to, do Roth conversions with your clients. So I feel like this is a great opportunity. Also, as we look at the future of potential tax consequences as we continue to look at the U.S. budget and whatnot. I think we're going to see probably some increased taxation potentially, and some maybe more hurdles or roadblocks for clients as they go to have to take money out of their qualified accounts. So by doing this now, it's a great time to look at this and implement into your practice if you're currently not doing Roth conversions. And like Glenn had said, this software and this program is really going to streamline it for you. So excited for everybody to be here. Happy to have Steve here, and don't want to take any more of his time. So I'll turn it over to Steve.
Hey, thank you, Tyrell. Glenn, thank you. Maureen, thank you. I know you guys put a lot of work into creating a nice event and some really great promotional pieces and everything I've seen on this. You guys are going to do phenomenal. But going back a couple years ago, I went through pretty heavy duty health scare where I was given 6 months to live. And I basically tripped through that situation after losing 70 pounds, been able to rebuild a lot of my health. But during the recovery, and in particular, going back about 12, 13 months ago, I started looking and say, okay, I had a lot of time to sit there and really think about what I want to do with the rest of my life, and how I would go about marketing if I wanted to, in a very compressed period of time, make a tremendous amount value-driven income for myself. In other words, I don't want to just make income. I want to be able to provide something really valuable for the marketplace, whether that's with clients or not. And thinking in terms of clients and reviewing all of it after everything I've been through since I've been licensed since I was 18. I'm 61 now, so I don't know how many years that is, 43 coming on like 44 years here in September that I've been in the industry, and I'm second generation. So I grew up around this industry. My dad was with Prudential for 13 years while I was growing up. So I knew about double indemnity and insurance clauses even at age 13. So I basically just grew up in this industry. And after everything I've seen and looking at the current environment that we're in, a couple things became really, really clear to me. One, I feel like we're in basically a compressed window of opportunity that I think is going to last between 4 and 8 years. They used budget reconciliation to get the tax cuts passed through. After that, there's some rules called the Byrd rules that will require a 60% or 60 vote majority to be able to make any changes going forward. And it's going to be really hard to envision these tax deductions and cuts being able to maintain their current status much beyond about 8 more years at the max. So historically, if you look at the tax rates from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, we're at a historical low as far as overall tax rates. So if you're dealing with somebody that has a relatively large income as a result of interest, dividends, rents, and Social Security, so basically affluent, we primarily focus on people that have at least $500,000 in what we call IPA, income producing assets, and we'll talk about that more here in a minute. And then if you combine that with a large IRA, what happens is there's a number of chain reactions that happen that don't require tax rates to go up. And in fact, we're going to show you how you can demonstrate to somebody without any tax rate changes in the future that as a result of the other chain reactions, as a result of the RMDs and their current income, that they have a solid case for doing a conversion. Now, the challenge comes that in the marketplace, there's some softwares like eMoney and Right Capital, Bolden Capital. In fact, I think I have all these on my computer. I think I use all of them, or I've used all of them as part of my learning process. But these softwares are very cumbersome and time consuming. You can expect to spend anywhere between 5 and 6 hours per client just with spreadsheets and all the planning and trying to do a full financial plan. Well, my goal is not to do a full financial plan. My goal is to show the most efficient way that I can help a client make the decision, do I convert or do I not convert? In other words, do I pay the taxes and then go tax-free, or do I go tax-free and then pay the taxes later on those distributions? How do you figure that out? And how can you do it in a really short span of time? So it's educational based, but if you're dealing with affluent, the more affluent they are, the larger the IRA, the bigger the problem, the bigger the chain reactions, and you start seeing where you can make 7 figures of difference for them and their heirs, which is what you're looking at. So my first epiphany was, I want to sell to the rich. So yes, it's great that I can help somebody that's only making $50,000 a year and only has 130 grand in their retirement account. That's great. But remember, I'm looking at this from the perspective of I may have a limited amount of time left on the planet. And if I'm going to make the maximum impact, and both for myself and for the people I work with, I need to focus on selling a big solution to very rich people. Now, the facts are, if you're selling FIAs, and Tyrell, you and Glenn, you can probably back me up on this. The average case size out there, just as far as transfers and cases going through an independent marketing organization, is around $180,000. Well, the average Roth conversion case, using our process, the average case is $679,000. $100,000. In fact, that's the average Roth conversion case, basically, if you just look at everything in total. So you're dealing with significantly more volume, so you can afford to do the things that you need to do to obtain a client. And if you can get in front of the right kind of clients, what you want is you want a constant stream of people that have basically more IRA than they know what to do with. In other words, they are IRA rich, and that IRA that's made them feel like they're IRA rich, they're a quote unquote IRA millionaire. They're really not an IRA millionaire because they have that contract with the IRS, and they're really an IRA 550,000 by the time you get all said and done. So we built a calculation that evaluates whether or not a conversion makes sense to them, that we call the Roth Blueprint. And the Roth Blueprint is not dependent upon tax rates changing. The last thing you want to do when you're working with the affluent is you don't want to get into any kind of political debate whatsoever. And I am personally politically agnostic. I think most politics end up being bad for all of us in the long run and extremely expensive. But I don't want to get into any kind of political debate whatsoever. So I'm tax neutral. So I just assume that the current tax rates are permanent. They're never going to change again for the next 100 years. Now, we all know that's not true. And if you apply any amount of common sense to it, with the 36 trillion of current debt, we're adding about another trillion every 100 days or so to the total balance. Extending the tax cuts, we can argue on how much that increased the national debt, but it's in the magnitude of several $trillion. So to think that we're going to continue and everything's just going to remain flat and there's not eventually going to need to be more revenue is pretty Pollyanna, but I make that assumption. So what we want to be able to do is show somebody where a Roth conversion is in their best interest, devoid of anything having to happen in the external world. In other words, based on current tax law, the way RMDs work, the way IRMA works, and everything that we already know as it's in place right now, does it make sense right now for them to do a conversion? So then we built a software, and we'll show you that in a minute, that does the Roth conversion. But then we backed up to a market, and this is pretty exciting. Here's a mailer we designed. We designed a mailer. I actually spent a month on this mailer before I even started testing it, but increase your lifetime tax-free wealth, that lifetime LTW, we call it LTW, their lifetime wealth. That's the North Star that we utilize to determine whether or not a conversion makes sense for somebody. Then it says increase your lifetime wealth up to 97%. I'll show you an example on a guaranteed basis. Using a simple example, I can show you where we can increase somebody's lifetime wealth up to 97% on a guaranteed basis using guaranteed contracts. Okay, the other epiphany I had is that the e-money and all the retirement analyzer type softwares out there, they're designed for people that are 100% focused on assets under management, or portfolio management, or stocks or bonds. And when you go try to stick a square peg in a round hole, and what I mean by that is any type of annuity configuration, you immediately start running into tool problems. And there's, for instance, no way to compare if the client has $1 million and they invested, and then you want to show them $1 million going into an annuity. Let's say your annuity has a 10% bonus. Well, you have to run two completely different scenarios on their software because you can't do any kind of comparison that builds the bonus in because it doesn't compute with their software. Secondarily, and I've done a number of cases this year already with clients that they don't have any heirs, they're IRA 401k rich, they have a strong income, strong retirement, maybe several million in their IRA, they have no kids, no heirs, or they've already done everything for their kids that they want to do financially, and they want to use their IRA 401k assets for themselves for maximum lifetime tax-free income. And so we've built in the 4 Roth-friendly carriers into the software so you can run those calculations and do the withdrawals out of the account to pay for the taxes, which I'll show you how we do that. and it actually makes all the benefit-based adjustments for you. And you could compare that to their baseline, because everything starts with their baseline. Their baseline is what happens if they're handcuffed and they never get the opportunity to do anything each year except get unhandcuffed, calculate their RMDs, make that withdrawal, and pay their taxes. In other words, if they don't do anything, what's going to happen to that IRA between now and, let's say, age 100? And so we got a lot of things here to unpack. Before I get diving deeper into this, Tyrell or Glenn, do you have any questions or feedback on what I've mentioned so far?
No, so for me, I just I'm excited to kind of see how you unpack it. It's something I think, like I'd mentioned, when doing Roth conversions and looking at it, I think to your point, there's a lot to look at and a lot to consider. And so I'm excited to just watch how you show us how to process it, how to process that and navigate that process. So
fantastic. Yeah. The other premise is that agents have a hard time with Roth conversions because they go down a rabbit hole of a million different considerations. So we wanted to build a software that give you the ability, and we'll call it a snapshot, even though it's very extensive in what it provides, but a snapshot view that quickly tells you as the agent or advisor and the client whether or not we should be deeply exploring this or not. And what's exciting is when you get into this market and you start marketing like we have, it puts you right in front of the type of client you want to be working with anyway. On every case I've done, not only have I done their IRA, but there's usually 3, 4 you'll find orphan annuities sitting around in their portfolio that are anywhere from $200,000 all the way up to some of them $800,000 that they don't have a plan for. They don't know how to layer it into their plan, and basically I help them figure that out as well. And we even have a tool for evaluating annuities called an annuity score built within our software that can help with that regard. But the opportunity there is just phenomenal. And going back to my original thing, and eating my own dog food, I wanted something where I could meet, because I'm dealing with physical issues and recovery and training and trying to get myself back physically like that. And I run a full-time software company. What could I do that if I only had time to have 7, 8 meetings a month, how can I go write $50 million a year of production? And that's what you have with the system. This puts you in front of so much in terms of assets that it's unbelievable. And I don't know, do any of your agents actually do seminars, Glenn, Tyrell?
No, absolutely. And I was going to say, it's like, just spoiler alert, everybody. Steve is talking about the genesis of how this all came together. You can tell Steve is a go-getter. He's got a Rogue t-shirt. I know he's a weightlifter, so he gets things done. So there's a whole system behind this that's been done for you. And we're lucky enough to be one of just very few IMOs that have access to this. So
yeah, just to get everybody excited about this, so they make sure they stay through and get into the guts and the details of that. But first, let me give you a really big why. So what we're doing with this. Once again, I spent a month developing this mailer, and my background for a period of time as part of one of the stages I've been through in my life, we actually had a direct mail company. We had all the equipment. We had a whole facility handling the direct mail, doing postcards and doing all that. We eventually opted out of that to just do 1,000% of our focus on software. But through that process, I know everything and then some about the direct mail industry. Enough to know that I want to hand it off to a company that we did hand that portion of this off to, Leading Response. And I've known them through this. I even knew them and maintained friendships with them when we were competitors. And they do a phenomenal job. But we don't have the time. We have one focus for us. That's the software. You as an advisor have one focus. That's solving clients. IMO has one focus. That's supporting you and being able to support your clients. So we're all doing our job. And I'm only out there in the market because my job is not to be an advisor. I did this because I go into battle first. I take all the arrows first. I make all the adjustments first. And that's why we have amazing software. But just to get you pumped up about something here, let me just show you something if I can share my screen, let me pull this up first.
Steve, while you're doing that, let me jump in and ask you a question. You mentioned the 4 friendly carriers for annuities. What do you consider those to be?
Hold on a second. We will just jump onto that in just 1 second. There are four total carriers. I found this thing I want to show you that are what we call Roth friendly. So you need to work with a Roth friendly carrier. So one of the things I'll mention in the seminar when I'm doing a seminar is that there's 737 total carriers in the marketplace. I may be off, give or take 1 or 2, but only 4 are basically Roth friendly. So that's American Equity, Equitrust, Athene, and North American. Now, what does Roth friendly mean and why is it so important? I always want to do what's best for the client. So think about this. You put somebody in a traditional FIA, it's a single premium contract, right? So you have withdrawal limits of 10%. All right. So if you're in a non-Roth friendly contract, for you to do a conversion, you have to transfer that 10% out to another contract, open another contract with that carrier, a different carrier, to do that conversion. And then that new contract be a Roth. Okay. Then the next year you got to do the same. So 1, you're restricted by the 10% limitation. 2, even if you could manage all that, is it in your client's best interest to have, 9, 10 contracts 10 years down the road that they're rotating on top of all the conversion math and everything else? It would be insane to me. So 4 carriers, and I'm sure there'll be more coming on board eventually, are what we call Roth friendly. So Roth friendly means you put the client in a Roth friendly account. That's the IRA. And then you open up within that, you move the money into that account. And then every year they can internally convert as much as they want from account A to account B internally. And it doesn't count against their 10% withdrawal. Then they can use their withdrawal capabilities to pull the money out and pay the tax. So there's 2 ways to do a Roth conversion. You can either do it paying the taxes internally, which is the way we show in the seminar. And the second way is you can pay with outside money. Well, common folklore is out there that you always want to pay the money with outside money, and you never want to have it come from within the IRA or the Roth because that reduces the account size. That's true until you get out there in what we call the real world, and you run into people with 2.1 million in their IRA and a grand total of 150,000 assets outside of that. So you're saying that during my early retirement, I need to evaporate all my liquidity, all of our travel plans, my grandkids' college plans, that condo we were going to get up north, all that all goes to hell. So I can give all the money to the government so I can keep all the money in the IRA for the conversion. All right. Furthermore, what happens when people, so let's say they don't do the conversion. They say, well, I can't afford to do that because I can't handle that tax hit. All right. So we show them a way to do it with no out-of-pocket cost by actually taking the withdrawals to pay the tax out of the IRA and calculating the ramifications of doing that in the software, including if we do guaranteed income, we will show the withdrawals coming out and our software calculates the benefit-based adjustments based on the 4 carriers. Each one of their benefit algorithms are completely different than each of the other 3 carriers. So if you don't have our software, you can't even think about how to think about doing this. You're so out of your league of being able to figure this out. It wouldn't matter how many spreadsheets you have. So if you want to be able to show them a guaranteed income structure that they can initiate with their IRA, that the only thing better than tax-free growth and distributions is tax-free growth and guaranteed lifetime tax-free income for the rest of your life that you can never outlive during a period of high interest rates like we have now. As you know, we're in a super strong environment for guaranteed lifetime income. So you run across, these, 59 and 60 and 62-year-olds that are healthy. Maybe they won't live to 100, but you can't guarantee one of them won't for sure. In fact, at age 60, there's a 93% chance that one of them will live to 43% chance one of them will live to 95 already. Well, if one of you are alive at 95, what are the odds that you could live to 100? So I calculate everything through age 100 in our calculations. And I find that if somebody's got a lot of health issues, that alone is a good reason maybe not to be thinking about a conversion. So you're looking for healthy, rich people that are, have more IRA than they know what to do with, that are going to be subject to, the RMDs and IRMA and everything that we calculate. So back to the Roth-friendly carriers. If you do it with a Roth-friendly carrier, after the conversion happens, let's say it takes 5 years, it's all in one contract right there. And then they can take, their withdrawals or do whatever they want out of that contract, and it's super clean. So you have to use Roth-friendly carriers. It also gives you a little bit of a takeaway with the audience, because they don't even know what you're talking about. And now they need to figure out, well, who are these, who's the 4 companies I should be working with? So we'll cover more of that here in a minute.
One other quick thing on the using Roth-friendly carriers, I can tell you from a logistics standpoint. So in years past, there hadn't been, years ago when I started doing Roth conversions 15 years ago, carriers weren't Roth-friendly. And I can tell you from a logistics standpoint, when you're Rothing over 5, 7, or 10 years, and you'll end up having 5, 7, 10 different annuity contracts. It becomes a logistics nightmare of keeping track of them. The clients get confused. They're getting all these statements. It's just a nightmare to try and manage that. So it's great having these Roth-friendly carriers where that's not the case.
Right. And I'll show you, when we get to the end of this, I'm going to show you a calculation, and I'm going to show you how you can do using guarantee contracts, a guaranteed Roth conversion, where you can tell them on day one, I guaranteed going to turn your $1 million into tax-free $1,050,000 in 5 years, guaranteed. And I've used this because I was up against a large case. It was over $3 million. And they said, well, we're going to have to run this by Morgan Stanley, handles all of our other money. We want to go in there. That turned into them having 3 weeks of meetings with Morgan Stanley. And because we had set our North Star as the maximum lifetime after-tax income through age 100, because they had no children, I said, we have to set a North Star. So before we ever got into all the mechanics, we had this North Star of what we wanted to accomplish, and Morgan Stanley couldn't touch it. So they can hypothetically, assuming the market does 8%, blah, 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 they can do it. And I said, well, Dorothea was her name. I said, is that what you want? Or do you want something where you don't have to look behind your back on the way into the end zone? You can just slam it and know that you're going to win every time. 1,000 parallel universes, the plan I'm giving you works every time. And then I'm also going to show you how you can do a guaranteed conversion where they can walk away in 5 or 6 years. For those people that say, oh, I hate annuities, I don't want to do this, I can show you how to even get those sales. And we'll cover that. But before I get in to the software, which I think we need to start getting into, I want to share my screen and show you something here. If you've ever done a seminar, this is going to be insane. Let me share my screen. All right. Can you guys see this? Okay, so these are some of the recent dinner seminars. Toledo, Ohio just completed 1.89% response rate. He had something like 80, 90 people in overflow. Tucson, which is a market I work in around Phoenix, is terrible, 1.26. Huntsville got a 0.60, but that was no food. So that's even a high rate there. San Diego, 2.30. Inglewood just finished up the other day, 2.64. So if you take the top 5 there and average them, it's like 1.89% average. Talking to Leading Response, which does tens of thousands of seminars a year across multiple markets, they've not seen response rates like this in 20 years. And I can tell you from my experience in direct mail, I haven't either. We are in the hottest marketplace ever. Seminars have not only rebounded from COVID, but they've over rebounded, and not any kind of seminars. We are doubling response rates of other types of financial seminars. And not only that, look at the IPA on this, 100,000. So we are only mailing people that we know the IPA on, and all of these except one did 500,000. So imagine that, 2.64% response rate. That means 5,000 mailers would have got 130 some people through the door with over $500,000 of income producing assets. You can't touch that with social media marketing. You can't touch that with anything. You have all the demographics on them, all in a concentrated area, all eyeball to eyeball, being able to educate them all at once. You gain credibility, reciprocity, everything, authority, everything that you gain from doing a seminar. And these response rates are real. This is sent to me from Leading Response. This is our current response rates. The ones in the white are the ones that are, just, the mailers are just now coming in, so we don't know the rate. What do you think of that?
But yeah, Steve, I think at 5,000 mailers, 1%, you're filling a room. Just to give some perspective.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, right? I mean,
So
1%, you're doing great. So these numbers are pretty incredible.
When I designed this mailer, the gold standard, the hope was to get mostly kind of close to 1%, like even 0.90, 0.85, 1.05. Never would have thought we'd be filling up restaurants 2.64% response rate with $500,000 IPA. That's insane. So usually to get a higher response rate, you don't want to go after the wealthy because they're the more skeptical. We're literally filling the rooms up and overflow with the system. So that's it's super exciting.
Hey, Steve, what is an IPA other than a
income
awesome
producing
beer?
assets?
I'm sorry?
Income producing assets.
Thank you. And then, Steve, are you doing any seminars with Zoom or anything online, or is this strictly an in-person system?
Are we on Zoom right now?
Well, you and I are on Zoom right now.
Yeah. Okay.
When you're talking about presenting the Roth Blueprint and the software, you're talking about in-person dinner seminar, correct?
You have to think about it. So I have a really large client that I met that was an online lead because I did a CNBC interview and they reached out to me. So they saw me on TV. So we'll call that media. So as a media generated lead, they're in South Carolina and doctor of medical practice. And I met with them. We had some phone conversations and they're moving $3 million. He's closing out his medical practice and it's a defined benefit plan and they're moving over to an IRA and doing a Roth conversion with me. Long story short, I ended up having to fly out there to work with him to get the deal done. So you have to ask yourself, if you had your whole life, you just spent 30 years accumulating your IRA, your 401k, it's your number one retirement asset. Are you going to work with somebody that you met on Zoom, or do you think you'd have a tendency to want to find an expert locally? Now, I'm not saying you can't do it, and I'm not saying it doesn't work, and I'm not saying that we're not eventually going to be helping assist with providing virtual leads. But I can tell you this, and I've worked with a lot of people that have made millions virtually. It is 5 times harder. It's 500% harder to close virtually. Now, if you're a beast, you might be able to do it. Can I do it? Yeah, but I'd rather just meet 8 to 10 clients a month. That's 1 to 2 visits a week. I mean, I got to get out and have some social life. So, I mean, why not drive down the street 1 to 2 times a week to meet with people that have the ability to make me $250,000 per case? I mean, if I was doing a commercial real estate deal, would I do it virtually or to make $250,000, or would I want to go take a look at the property? You can do what you want, but this is the foundation. So even if you love virtual, I would say still do the seminars because one, to give you, you do a couple of these deals, you have enough money to do virtual marketing for the next 30 years just from 2 deals. So, you can afford the time and energy to do it. There's really no such thing as passive income. It's all different levels of active income. You're going to spend the energy anyway. So the idea of sitting around in your underwear thinking you're going to make a fortune virtually, I would challenge that you're not going to make anywhere near the amount of money per hour, and you can spend more time in your underwear if you run a seminar and then go spend your time at home in your underwear. It's just my personal thought. I want to have maximum impact, and getting these kind of response rates. There's probably a window right now that we have right now. It's definitely within that 4 to 8 window that right now I would trade the last 43 years for the opportunity to have 8 years of what I see right now. I'd give away all the income I made in the last 40 some years. Give me this kind of window, because I've had windows like this come up in the past and didn't take advantage of it. Looked at it and said, man, I missed that. That was the window, right? This is the window right now. If you're on this call right now, you have an opportunity. Okay, I'm going to jump in. Let's have any more just overview questions and show you how quickly you can run a Roth Blueprint. So you might be expecting a 2-hour training on this. This is a feature, not a bug. We have designed this to focus on just what you need to help that client make that decision. If you want to spend 8 hours designing and do a multi-generational financial plan with retirement analyzer and e-money and figure out their social security planning and all that, do all that. But right now, your job is to help them make the decision. Do I pay the tax now or do I pay the tax later? And I'll show you how we do that. While I'm queuing this up, any other questions?
Yes, actually, when we talk about IPA, does that include income generated or just realized?
IPA is assets that are producing some kind of income for them. So in other words, CDs, IRAs, that type of thing, income generating assets. It's not talking about their real estate. So basically liquid assets. Do they have 500,000 of investable assets? Things that are fungible that can be moved around.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is the Roth Blueprint. So the whole concept is you do the workshop, you help people make a simple decision, you ask for an appointment. We have custom designed appointment cards that we provide as part of the overall package. If you're working through DMI, we have custom books that we use to help close the appointment. And this is a 7-step planning guide that goes into every step of the planning process. And you give them this as a bridge between the seminar and that first meeting. Okay. And so when I pick up your card, audience, when I pick up your card, I'll give you your book. And so, obviously when we get into how to actually do the seminars and that training, I'll get into detail on that. So then you go meet with the client and they, you have your small talk for 30 seconds, say, okay, so tell me about your situation. And what that means is you want to know how much they have in qualified assets. So this is great because that's where you want to be. That's where all the money is. All right. So then if I'm doing a plan, and I'll go here to advisor, you have your dashboard and you simply create a new case. And then it says Roth Blueprint. So it says select blueprint type. And we have growth, FIA. Then we have 4 carriers, the Athene and their guaranteed income ascent, American Equity with the Income Shield, the Market Early with Equitrust, and the Pay Pro with North American. And then if you're doing mixed assets.
Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think you're still sharing your
yep, you're right.
performance card there.
Let me stop share.
All right, thank you.
Share again. I'll share that screen. Better?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I was showing before I jumped over here, you go to rothblueprint.com. After you're on the software, you click I'm an advisor. Then you're in the dashboard, you click on new case. Then from there, you select blueprint type. And I will start with growth, FIA. This is the basics. This is the foundation. We also have 4 guaranteed income products from each of the 4 Roth-friendly carriers and a growth calculation if you're using a non-annuity asset and you happen to be an advisor. So I'll start with growth. So from here, it's really simple. You enter in the client's name. So I'm going to use Tom. We'll use age 60 and married filing joint. So I will use spouse Mary, and she's 60. I'm gonna illustrate. Let's just say I'm going to illustrate Athene. I'm going to do a PE 10. What's the bonus, guys, on the PE 10 if I don't pay the fee?
So they just did an increase on it. So it's going to be 16 in most states.
That's with no fee?
That's with no fee.
And what is it with a fee?
In most states, it's going to be 22%.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show an initial premium of $1 million. By the way, the first thing you'll be shocked at when you do a mailing using our mailer and the right demographic, you'll be absolutely shocked at how many seven-figure IRAs are floating around in the market. And not only seven-figure IRAs, in a lot of cases, each spouse has a seven-figure IRA. You'll be shocked. I mean, there's so much money out there. Okay, so you enter in the premium. You can enter in the bonus amount. Then you can enter in your own user-defined rate of return. So if I do the 16% bonus, what's a good back-tested rate of return that you're comfortable with, Glenn or Tyrell?
Yeah, I'm usually using between 5 and 7% on that performance elite if I'm using a good diversified mix of the indexes, along with the 2-year and 1-year point-to-points.
Okay, so we'll say 6.
Yep, that sounds
okay. The system defaults to a 10% penalty-free amount. Okay, so then this next section is basically where the rubber meets the road, right here. Let me see if I can pull this up. I can use a little bit of these tools, but this section right here, I'm sorry, everything in this section right here, this is the focus of what we want to be doing. It says tax data. The first one is taxable income. Now, when you're running what I call the Roth Blueprint snapshot, I just go with taxable income. And I just say something like this. Okay, Tom and Mary, about how much did you pay taxes on last year? Now, they may give me the wrong number. They may give me their income amount before standard deductions and all that. But generally, people have a good idea of what their taxable income amount. So let's just say they say $150,000. And then I say, okay, great. Then the next rate we set is their max tax bracket. Now, this isn't their current tax bracket, although in a lot of cases we use their current tax bracket, but this is the tax bracket that we do not want to exceed during the conversion. All right? So our first goal is to show them how to do this with no out-of-pocket costs. The second goal is we want to do it without jumping tax brackets. So our software gives you the ability to set a max tax bracket. Okay, then the next thing, the next thing is the state tax rate. In Arizona, it's 2.5. Then you can choose to either pay taxes internally from the IRA itself or externally if you want it to come from an outside source. I'm almost 90% of the time I'm talking internal only. All right, then I can show withdrawals. In this case, I'm showing no income, but I can show specified withdrawal amounts or max income, which is a tool that's kind of unique to us, where we calculate the maximum withdrawal amount between any two ages. But let's just say no income, and maybe their goal is to kind of let this grow and give it to their heirs. Then we can either optimize this or we can control how much we want to convert each year. I recommend optimize because that's the point of the software. We can also defer the compensation in case, or the conversion, in case you're using a contract where you have to defer 1 year before taking any withdrawals. I usually, if I'm using a bonus contract in here, which would have the higher, that would solve that problem because you can take a withdrawal in the first year. All right, then the next setting is protect initial premium, yes or no. Then this means if we have $1 million in the IRA, if we protect that initial premium, the balance will never go below the $1 million. So essentially, when I'm meeting with a client or I'm going through the seminar, the whole process, the Roth Blueprint, the objective of the Roth Blueprint is to do 3 things. I'm going to show you how to convert your $1 million without any out-of-pocket costs, without jumping tax brackets, and without reducing your balance ever below the initial starting amount. We're always keeping that principle above the million. So those 3 things. If I can do that, is there any reason you wouldn't want to have tax-free instead of taxable? And this is after they've seen all the chain reactions. All right, so that's protect the initial premium. If I don't care about that, I can change that parameter. And then the last setting is the heirs tax rate, because everything runs off something we call lifetime wealth. I'm going to set that. We'll say, yeah, well, my kids are doing okay. They're not doing as well as us. We'll say they got a 32% tax rate. And what that's doing is it's going to say, if your remaining ending balance is $100,000, we have to subtract 32 of that as part of your lifetime wealth, because the kids are going to have to pay 32 grand. So there's only going to be $68,000 left over. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So it took me about 10 times longer to explain this than it does for me to actually enter it. If I was just entering it, it takes me 1 minute. I click submit and it does a whole bunch of really cool stuff. So we got Tom. Tom's initial balance is $1 million. His lifetime wealth, and this is just an overview, and I'll show you how we get to these numbers. His lifetime wealth, if he doesn't convert, is going to be 3.9 million, about 4 million. And his lifetime wealth after the conversion, doing it our way, is going to be 9.346. That's a 136% increase. So the next chart shows, and I say, this is what we want to do, Tom, Mary. Here's your current balance, which is going to be at 1,160,000 because of that 16% bonus. Our goal is for that balance to decrease down here through year 7 to 0. And for your blue line, which is a Roth IRA, we want that to increase. And so then at the end, you got 1.217 million in the IRA at year 7. So that's the goal. So how do we do this? So this is getting into the mechanics of it. I sometimes show this right up front. I'll show it to you because this is how it works. All right, we set their max tax rate at 24%. They told us their taxable income is 150,000. All right, 394 is the, and if you hover over that, I think it tells you. Actually, it doesn't. Yeah, this is the theoretical highest dollar amount available based upon your chosen max tax bracket. So we can fill in up to 394 of income before them jumping to the 32% tax bracket. So that means we have 244,600 to work with, which is the 394 minus their taxable income. Does that make sense? So 244 is what we can work with coming out of the IRA. So we pull the 244 out of their IRA annuity because we moved the $1 million into the IRA annuity. We pull out the 244,600 and we pay first 57,000 of taxes, 6,100 to the state, leaving 180. So 180 goes into the part B of the contract in a Roth friendly carrier. So 180 ends up on the Roth friendly side. The remainder they withdraw, which is within their 10%. They withdraw that out of the contract and send that to the IRS. If it's working with Equitrust, they will do that for you automatically and send off the tax payment. So you can do all that internally without jumping contracts. So now they got 188 in their Roth IRA, and the balance is still in the regular IRA. Then we go down to the next year and we do this. And between 2025 and 2030, we convert 244, and on year 6, we convert 90,778. So the last year they only paid 20,000 in tax, and that last conversion is 67. All right. So we go down here, and here you can see it in the beginning of year 1,160,000 IRA withdrawal converted taxes. You can hover over that to see that. They get that interest, and then there's their end of year balance. That's after the interest. So that's the combined balance of their two IRAs. Now we have more detailed sheets. You can actually download all this in Excel, which we have in our training to show you how to do that. But you can go as deep as you want. But this then shows the account balance through age 100 growing to the $9,360,000. Right here, this is the real meat and potatoes of it. This is where you actually can make the sell right here. So the quality of your case when you're working with Affluent and you want to go from not being able to get Roth IRA cases and work with big IRAs to being able to close 80% of them, this is what you have to be able to do. You have to be able to create a baseline that the client believes in. They have to agree that you understand their current scenario at a level that qualifies you to earn the right of the transaction. You're always earning transaction rights. All right. So now this is the quick down and dirty snapshot. I'm going to show you how this works. And then I'm going to show you in the next section how you win that client over and earn that transaction right, and make sure that they are believing what you believe. All right, so here's how it works. Okay, so if you do not do the conversion, Tom, Mary, your $1 million, you're going to take out RMDs. That's called distributions. They're required, but over your lifetime, you're going to take out 4,750,000 of distributions. Out of those, you're going to pay 1,229,000 in tax. So your after-tax income is going to be 5,321,000. Then the balance of that, after we pay 32% of the remaining balance to the kids, is going to be 925. So your total wealth, Tom and Mary, is a combination of your total lifetime after-tax income plus your total ending balance after tax. That's it. And you guys can, and you can ask questions of the agents and advisors on the phone right now. And Tyrell, you and Glenn can challenge me. Is there any way to get any more money out of your IRA than a combination of your after-tax income and the after-tax remaining balance? Is there any other way to extract value at all from that IRA? I don't think so in my estimation.
No, none that I can think of.
Because you can't escape the tax. So the only income you can take is after-tax income, and your heirs can't escape the tax. So the only thing they can take is the after-tax ending balance. That's it. That's the full extent of the IRA. All right. So that's our North Star. So now all we need to do is convince them that we have their baseline right and that they agree that we understand their situation. Stephen Covey said in his books, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, seek first to understand, then be understood. You do it in that order. People say, well, how do you close on the second call? Well, eventually I don't need to close because they feel understood. Once they feel understood, now they're going to listen to my plan, and then we can get down to, well, what about this and the annuity contract and that? We can get down into details to overcome, any issues they have, but we're on the same page where they believe I understand them, and now they're going to give me their full undivided attention and understanding my plan and solution. And they either like it or don't like it. You win some, you lose some, but you're not going to get to that point if they don't believe you understand them. So my understanding is, Tom and Mary, based on 6% growth, if you do nothing, you're going to have 3,957,000 lifetime wealth out of this account. Does that sound like that's you? If we don't do anything other than just pay the RMDs. Now I'll show you how we can prove that to them here in a minute, but that's the idea. Then you go over to the blueprint trajectory. Now on this, I'm not showing any withdrawals, so we're just doing this one for the heirs. But they have 1,160,000 initial account value after the bonus. Their taxes are going to pay the 347. That's the taxes during the conversion. All right, their after-tax income is going to be 0 because they're just letting it grow. Their after-tax ending balance is going to be the 9,360,000. Okay, the one thing I didn't mention on here on the current trajectory is we also subtract their lifetime IRMA. IRMA is a big deal. When you're talking about IRMA in these workshops, that's one of the 6 chain reactions. You have people going like this. You have people dropping their hands in there. They're not only paying IRMA now, they know that this is a bad dog deal. And our seminar makes the IRMA a really bad dog deal. And I'll get into that if we have time to get into the seminar. But on our plan, they're only going to pay $13,256 in IRMA. So the lifetime wealth is $9,346,000 for a total increase of $136,000. So your job is to make them believe all this. All right. You always need to reduce the number of gotta believes. And the problem is most reps get lost in all the infinite number of details with financial planning. The clients get lost. You have to keep it focused on, do I want 136% more in my account or do I not? And then you want them thinking, well, whether I work with Steve or not, we need to figure out some way to get into a Roth because this, $5 million difference is too much to forget about. Right?
Hey, Steve, do you mind if we pause on that thought for 1 second? So for the people that might have to jump at the top of the hour, I just want to share some contact information for Tyrell real quick, and then we'll continue from there if you don't mind. I just want to make sure that they can call Tyrell today if they want, and just want to also mention real quick that I'm going to throw out the cost of this software and what it gets you. But it's only $299 per month billed annually. And that also gets you access to the whole dinner seminar and all the IP behind that. There's this PowerPoint presentation that probably deserves to have a Pulitzer. It's one of the best PowerPoints I've ever seen, Steve. The $45,000 PowerPoint that's what it cost Steve to build this thing. It's beautiful piece of software. But so everything you need to be able to run that program is offered to you. But just the software alone for some people is all they need. But a lot of people want to have qualified leads to be able to follow up on, right? So that's what the dinner seminar is all about. So I'm going to just pull up Tyrell's contact information real quick. Hang on one second.
Steve, can I ask you a couple of questions while Glenn's pulling up Tyrell's information?
Absolutely.
Can you guys see that, by the way?
We can.
Yep.
Okay.
So, Steve, how do you take into account the big, beautiful bill? And is that taken into account in your software and things like the salt phase outs and other phase out, phase ins?
Yeah, I'll show you that here in a second. That's what I was getting ready to get into.
All right. And is there a CRM that your system connects with?
No.
Okay. And people are wondering what Irma is.
So I know in my personal life, Maureen, I have, and people say, well, what's the best software? There is no best software. I pay $750 a month for AIs. I have probably 6 financial planning softwares, in addition to that. But for doing Roth conversion, this is the software.
Right.
I probably spend $30,000 a year, on softwares, and I'll probably spend even more than that in the future. I make no bones about it. I'm elephant hunting. I don't spend a lot of time with clients that are under $1 million IRAs. One, I don't have a lot of time. Two, I want to compress time and bring things to me, and for me to get the objectives accomplished that I want to get objected or accomplished for me and what I'm going to be able to do for my children. If my situation ends badly, I don't have time to jack around. So this software is very focused, and it will make you more money than any other piece of software you have. But we're not a be-all, do-everything kind of thing, relative to the CRM. But it does track your cases. It saves your cases, and you have that. But we're not HubSpot.
Right, exactly. So while we have this up, everyone, feel free to take your camera up. You're on your phone. That's Tyrell's, I believe it's your V card with all of his information on it. Feel free to contact Tyrell at tjensen@dmi.com. Tyrell, what's your phone number?
Yeah, it's 781-919-2368.
Thank you. And all of our recordings will be eventually up on youtube.com at DMI Marketing, or you can always visit us at dmiuniversity.com. Thank you for that.
Sorry
Absolutely.
for the commercial interruption there.
I know, right? So,
I don't know if you got people by show of hands out there that on the reps, if they can raise their hand. Do you want me to spend the next 15 minutes showing presentation dynamics, or do you want me to do a deeper dive on the software, which is in the training? Once they have the software, they can go through the deeper dive. Would you rather see the marketing component or see more deep dive on the software?
people are asking about the presentation so far.
Okay. All right, great.
Sounds good to me.
So want to see this $45,000 presentation.
Yeah, that piqued everyone's interest, surprisingly.
Yeah. Well, what's really funny, and this is just funny, funny for me, it's kind of tongue in cheek. We've spent millions developing the software, and I had an advisor just email me that was at the boot camp that we just did a recent boot camp training, and which is kind of a deep dive like what we're going to do with you. But signed up 28 consultations the week after she returned back from the boot camp as a result of what she learned in the boot camp. But agents, they want the software, they want the power. But what they really say is they say, well, that's all great, but how do you put me in front of these people? So our industry is unique. Agents care, but they only care so much if you don't have, if you can't answer to how you're going to get them in front of people. So we've very carefully built that into the process. Okay, let me share my screen. I don't know if you can see my screen or not yet. Probably not.
Not yet. There we go.
Okay. I'm going to jump through sections of this fast, but there's you'll be able to see this as world class very quickly. I call this the Statue of David presentation. And the first thing, your first job, and I have done probably 1,000 seminars. Your first job in a seminar is to get engagement from the audience. If you don't get the audience engaged, they're not going to pay attention and you're not going to get the close at the end. So the objective of the seminar is to create reciprocity, which is why I always use nice dinner restaurants. And we do that because affluent people, if they get two flyers in the mail, one's to go into the library to get cold Dunkin' Donut coffee, and the other one's going to Fleming's Steakhouse. He's going to take his spouse and they're going to go to Fleming's. They're going to make a pinky swear on the way there. They're going to say, okay, we're going to get here. We're going to pay attention to this, but we're not going to set an appointment. We're just there to get the information. Your job during the presentation is to break the pinky swear. So the way you do that is you want to make it entertaining. So it's edutainment. So you can't be dry and boring. You need to have fun with the audience. So what I did is I created the Statue of David presentation to get them engaged right away, get them reacting and responding with me, so that I have their attention and they like me by the end of the seminar, and they have multiple reasons to go ahead and circle the time. So it starts with your tax-free, your blueprint for tax-free wealth, Roth Blueprint. So I kind of start out after I've introduced myself. I said, by show of hands, how many people here have been to Europe? And almost everybody will raise their hand, especially 60 plus. Once again, our target market is 60 to 68, 500,000 IPA or greater. Okay, so for those of you who've been to Europe, how many of you during that trip happened to go to Italy? And then I flash the slide, Italy. Basically, everybody's hands stay up because most of them flew into Rome to begin with. All right, so for those of you who are in Italy, how many of you, keep your hands up if you've been to Italy, how many of you happen to make it over to Florence? All right, so most of the people that went to Europe, that went to Italy, they did some kind of a tour, they popped around the major cities, and Florence was one of them. And then I start slowing down a bit, and I said, so for those of you who are in Florence, did any of you by any chance happen to see the Statue of David? Okay, and I pause, and at least 60% of the hands will remain up. I say down. So everybody put their hands out. Said, so first time I saw the Statue of David was about 15 years ago. This thing's 17 feet high and it's just massive and it's incredible. You think there's no way a human being could actually carve that. You just basically stand there with your jaw dropped over this thing. So the statue was actually covered or cut out of a piece of rock called the Goliath. And going back to 1452 or so, there was a number of sculptors that worked on the Goliath to try to sculpt Goliath out of the David and Goliath scene or story. And because the rock was very brittle and hard to work with, most of them gave up. And this thing was in a large quarry in Florence. And basically it was unmoldable, hard to work with, until a guy came along by the name of Michelangelo. So in around 1502, Michelangelo spent 4 years, hardly left the site of the work or of the stone, and basically worked around the clock for 4 years to create the statue of David. So he did this thing, created this incredible statue, And allegedly, the Pope at the time approached Michelangelo regarding his genius and how he carved the statue and said, just like, how did you do it? And David said, it's real easy. I just remove everything that is not David. Okay, so we're going to use that as a metaphor tonight for what we're going to be talking about in removing the negatives. And the negatives with your IRA is something called required minimum distributions. Now pause here for a second, Tyrell and Glenn. What you've done there is you've set something for them to think about and talk about on the way home, because that's a great hook. So think you got the big stone, that's your retirement account. Now, how do we make it perfect? We have to remove everything that doesn't belong. What doesn't belong? Well, you're going to see here, RMDs are what don't belong. So this is how we set the hook. And I'm going to be, there's parts of this I'm going to be restructuring because I've actually made this even better than it already is. But that's something that's going to be evolving over the next couple of weeks. But before we get into the details on the RMDs, there's basically only 3 tax structures. There's non-qualified, and I cover those. You pay taxes as you go. No flexibility. It's just, you see what you get is what you see, and you pay taxes every year. The next type of taxable vehicle is called a qualified plan. That's your 401ks, IRAs, 403bs. And with those, your deposits are tax-free, your growth is tax-free, but you're taxed on the distributions. Then the last kind of account is something called a Roth. With a Roth, your taxes or your deposits are taxed, your growth is tax-free, but your distributions are tax-free. And so when you look at this from worst to best, non-qualified is the worst type of retirement account to have. Qualified is the next best, but your very best type of money that you can hold your retirement account in is something called a Roth. All right. So I've got this really simple in your mind. I've explained the different types of retirement accounts. And then I say tonight is part of a 4-step process. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm future pacing with them to let them know that this is going to be a 2 or 3 meeting process. And tonight is that first meeting. When you're doing a seminar, this event, this is your first meeting. So your first meeting is not after the seminar. This is your first meeting with the client. That's the way you need to think about it in your head. So you are selling from the seminar. It's education, but you have to close them in that first meeting on the idea that a Roth conversion is good for them. That's your close in meeting 1. So this is step 1 of a 4-step process. And then I talk about something called ACTE. So a number of years, I did some work with Richard Makowicz. He was in the show Deadliest Weapons. He was a SEAL Team 3 team member and total badass. But he taught me this cycle for dealing with stress called ACTE. What happens is when you're in a super stressful situation, your mind starts looping. You start having the same question over and over and over again. So it's hard to take action. So we all do this in small areas and in big areas, but here's basically the way it works. You have a bad situation, like let's say you fall off a boat that's capsized or collapsed or been had some type of an accident, and you're in the water and you're 3 miles from shore. So the first thing you want to do is you want to assess the situation. Okay, I'm 3 miles from shore. There's lots of currents out here. I'm probably not going to be able to swim to shore. I'm in a world of hurt. You've assessed the situation. You create a simple plan. Say, I see over there 300 yards, there's a piece of the boat that broke off that looks like it's floating with some piece of wood or something like that. I'm going to swim to that plank or that board that I see over there. Then you take action. You start swimming. You get there. You got the board. You're on the board. Then you evaluate the situation, and then you repeat it. It's called ACTE cycles. So now you assess the situation. Okay, I need to start kicking this way because it looks like the current's going blah, blah, blah. You assess the situation. Then you create a simple plan. I'm going to kick and go that way. Then you take action and you start paddling, and you keep evaluating it. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Tonight is the assessment part of the situation. We're going to be talking about whether or not you should be doing a Roth conversion. All right, now I'm going to jump through this, you guys, pretty quick because I just want to show you the nature of the slides. But we go through Tom and Mary. They have a decision to make. Do they pay the taxes now or later? And I show paying taxes now versus later. And then I break that down and show them there's basically, there's no difference in their total account balance, whether they pay the tax now and then let the money grow, or they pay the tax after they let it grow. It's the same 1.4 million. So where's the leverage? So where's the leverage to convert to a Roth IRA? That's when you bring up the next concept, which is removing the compounding cost of required minimum distributions. So forced RMDs start a series of what we call chain reactions. So this is the concept that really locks in these people's brain. They leave there with the idea and the concept that if the only way to get rid of these chain reactions, which basically obliterates and explodes their retirement situation, is by conversion. Conversion solves all the problems of the chain reactions. So the 6 major chain reactions, and this is the meat of the seminar. We go through it. Increases their taxable income and their AGI, which then increases their tax on their Social Security income, which then increases their IRMA charges related to their Medicare, which then also phases them out of all their deductions, like Maureen, you were talking about this, the SALT deductions and the different things that it increases. We talk about the widow's penalty. So you have the same income from your RMDs that are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. One of the spouses dies, which usually happens at some point in life, and then the other one's now a single taxpayer. So now they're in a worse bracket and have the RMDs to deal with. And then the heirs inherit the tax liability. So then we go through Tom and Mary. We do an example with their AGI. I show their income. I show what's going to happen with inflation, on their income as it gets adjusted. Then I show the impact of the RMDs on top of that, and that is added to their base income. Then we show the tax brackets adjusting as a result of that, and then we show the additional cumulative tax from those RMDs, and then we go on the tax on Social Security. Now I have this in here. I don't work with clients that aren't already paying the max tax under Social Security. That's not who I'm attracting. That's not who I'm mailing to, but I have it in here because it is one of the 6 chain reactions. Up to 85% of their Social Security becomes taxable, and our software accounts for that. In fact, our software accounts for everything. It accounts for IRMA, it accounts for their Social Security, it accounts for their Social Security increasing at 2% annually, it accounts for their standard deductions increasing at 3% annually, it accounts for their senior deductions of $1,600 or $3,200 for a couple, $2,000 for a single person. It accounts for their new tax $6,000 deduction that they get. Everything is accounted for in there. It accounts for 6% increases on their IRMA. Everything is accounted for, but that's in the advanced panel that I didn't show you. So we explained the tax on Social Security and show that. You eliminate that by doing a conversion. Tax on IRMA. I'll slow down on IRMA. So you have the different thresholds for IRMA. Normally, your premium is $185 a month, but as your income increases, there's this IRMA charge that gets a surcharge added that gets deducted from your Social Security. So Tom and Mary are 284. They're tier 3. So their Part B surcharge is 185 plus their D is 218 a month per person. So they're paying $437 a month times 12. That's $5,253 a year in IRMA charges that they have to pay that come out of their Social Security. All right. So between now and 95, their IRMA is going to go from $5,000 a year at age 75 to $17,000 a year. But that's if they were 75 now. How old are they now? They're 60. All right. So what's the problem? Right now, they're going to pay cumulative 200 and whatever. I got my Zoom thing in the way there. They're going to pay cumulative $210,000. But here's the bigger problem. IRMA charges have been increasing over 6% annually actually about 6.5% since 2015. So the IRMA charge now, that if we were calculating Tom and Mary now, is 52.53. 10 years ago would have only been 32.64. So IRMA is increasing at 6%. So by the time Tom and Mary actually get out to 75, their IRMA is going to start at 13,000, not 52.53, because they're not paying that now. So 15 years from now, this is going to start at the 13,000, and as that increases, they're going to spend $511,000 on their inflation-adjusted IRMA between 75 and 95. But they didn't just lose the $511,000. What else do you think they might have lost? And the answer is they also lost the opportunity to earn money on those dollars. So that's called, economists have a name for it, called lost opportunity cost. So had they had the $511,000 starting at $13,000 a year, and had they been able to invest that at 6%, then they could have ended up basically with another $401,000. So they lost that opportunity to earn the $401,000 because of the $511,000. So factoring everything in, including lost opportunity costs, IRMA cost them almost $1 million over their lifetime as a result of the RMDs as that chain reaction. So once again, the chain reaction is what we focus on. So IRMA charges, we then go into loss of deductions, QBI, the SALT deductions, the different things on there, we touch on them. The widow's penalty, that's your age 60, 43% chance that Tom or Mary could reach age 95. And then we show the tax bracket they're in now. Then with the RMDs, their income increasing, and then that pushes them up to a higher tax bracket. But then something happens to one of them, and one of them becomes a single taxpayer, and then that 24% bracket now becomes 35% tax bracket. Same income, worse brackets. Then the heirs, the liability, the forced distributions reduce the account value, for the heirs. Most heirs have to liquidate their account within 10 years. So all these problems can be solved in only one manner. That's by doing a conversion. So RMDs are the central force each year. You're forced to withdraw more and more and more, and you have to pay more and more taxes. Even if taxes don't increase, these are the things that are going to impact Tom and Mary over their lifetime with that $1 million. So then you basically end with kind of these types of visuals. RMDs result in higher taxable income, which results in tax on Social Security, increases your an adjusted income, provisional income tax thresholds are crossed, and up to 85% of your Social Security becomes taxed. Then you go to the next one. RMDs push you into a higher tax bracket. You lose control of timing and bracket management. Medicare surcharges kick in at $206,000, pushes you over the threshold, results in thousands more paid in the premiums. You lose your deductions, QBI. You phase out of itemized deductions. You lose your tax credit eligibility. Widow's penalty, surviving spouse files a single, same RMD, higher tax bracket. Obviously, I'm going through this a lot faster than I do with the clients. Heirs inherited tax time bomb. Secure Act forces most heirs to liquidate within 10 years. Large IRAs, kids are taxed at the top marginal bracket. No income control, massive tax inefficiency. So here's the visual. This is the visual that you want in the client's prospects' minds. Chain reactions from the RMDs. This says it all in a nutshell. All you did during the seminar is you went through and you showed them mathematically, proved to them why these are a problem for Tom and Mary, and probably will be for them as well. So that's the idea. You don't want them thinking about a million things. You want them thinking about, do I want RMDs or do I not want RMDs? That's your decision. If you don't want RMDs, circle of time, we'll talk about the best way to get you there. So this is step one of the 4-step process where you assess the situation. The next part is, create a simple plan. So you kind of go through this acronym again, with them. And then you talk about the lifetime wealth equation. I'm going to improve upon this slide because we've got much better in the software of actually calculating and showing this. But basically, the two options are, here's what happens to your IRA if we just pay the RMDs and let it roll using Roth Blueprint. We create a simple plan. I explain to them that we use A-plus annuity providers. We provide sometimes a substantial account bonus. We use something called a Roth-friendly account. I go into that, and we do the downside protection. I do this in the seminar. I touch on this because I don't want to have this fight in the home, and I don't want to waste my time. So there's benefits to using an annuity during a conversion, and I can even show them on a guaranteed basis, which I know we've ran out of time to get into that, how we can do that even using a MYGA with a Roth-friendly account. I can actually calculate $1 million actually becoming, let's say, $1,055,000 tax-free, 100% guaranteed. There's no gotta believes. Everything's guaranteed, and nobody else can beat it. Not Morgan Stanley, not anybody. Guaranteed income. I can show you how. Here's your $1 million account. I can turn it into $84,000 a year after tax, tax-free income for the rest of your life. Guaranteed. Morgan Stanley can't beat it. So our program is designed to do three things: no out-of-pocket cost, no account reduction, no jumping tax brackets. That's basically the drum we're beating. No out-of-pocket costs, without any account reduction, and no jumping tax brackets. That's what our software can show them how to do, or what to do, or how to do. So here's what would happen with Tom and Mary using the Roth Blueprint: 7.5 million versus, if they don't do anything, 3 million, which is kind of what I showed you when I ran through the software of Tom and Mary using 6%. I think we came up with numbers pretty similar to this. So would you rather have you and your heirs have 3 million taxable or 7.5 million tax-free? Roth Blueprint. So schedule a time. You got three options. You can do nothing. You can go it alone or work with Morgan Stanley or somebody, or you can accelerate results, work with my team, schedule a session, let us run a Roth Blueprint for you, and figure out how to do this in the most efficient way possible. And then I go into the book, schedule a free 30-minute session. We put together as part 2, which is create a simple plan. We put together your 7-step planning guide to help with that next step after that. So if after assessing the situation tonight, if you feel like the next step is for you and you want to learn how to create a simple plan, let's put together a 30-minute session. I'll come meet with you, or you can come to my office. I go meet with them. I'll review your current situation. I'll generate an initial blueprint and show you how you can optimize your tax-free wealth. And then I go to a slide like this, circle a time, and I go into what I call third grade mode, which is kind of advanced training. I mean, I went through this really fast. I spent 45 minutes to an hour going through this, when I'm with the audience. But you can see it's a very powerful, very animated, very disturbing presentation, designed to get the job done. So in closing on this, the job of the mailer, so you have to only do one thing at each step. The job of the mailer, first of all, the job of the demographics is to make sure that you're only rounding up the people that fit your demographics. So the job of the demographics is to find wealthy people. Okay, so then you send the mailer out to the wealthy people that are interested in IRAs. The job of the mailer is to have them self-identify that, yeah, this whole Roth Blueprint thing sounds cool. If the 97% more tax-free wealth, the job of the mailer is to take the people that the demographics found and bring them to your workshop. The job of the workshop is to help them assess the situation so that they set an appointment. The job of the workshop is to get the appointment. Everything has one job. The demographics is to find the wealthy people. The mailer is to bring them in. The seminar is to get them to select an appointment. The appointment is to understand, have them know that you understand their situation. Then the next appointment is to have them understand your situation. And the next appointment is to do paperwork. Any questions?
Steve, we love your commitment to this presentation and then everything you're doing with the program. We're super excited about it. And yet I just want to reiterate that Tyrell is a great person to contact. Steve's pretty busy. However, he's given us a lot of our time, and we have the ability to reach out to him with any questions, any support. Everything that he's described for you today is also represented in videos, training videos on the software, on the presentation. We have also other collateral that can help in training. But Tyrell, is there anything last words that you have? And I'm gonna share your contact information again here.
Appreciate that, Glenn. Yeah, I just say it's a massive opportunity. Obviously, there's again, the software. It's a huge help to be able to kind of take all the math and all the work and the process of being able to help a client convert and show the benefit. I've always said, as I've talked with reps over the years about Roth conversion, there's always been a few hurdles. One is being, hey, there's a lot of complicated numbers here. How do I get through that? How do I show the benefit to the client of why a Roth conversion makes sense? And then how do I explain the process that we're going to go through? This kind of solves all of those three. So it really is a very streamlined process to go through. And then as well with the presentation, the opportunity for these seminars, it then gets you in front of the right clients who are going to need that help. So huge opportunity. Feel free to reach out to me. Happy to have a discussion, walk through the software some more, talk through the opportunity of the dinner seminars, and be able to help you with that.
I want another thought here. I need to make sure. If you go to Roth Blueprint and you're signing up for the software, when you go through the checkout process, it'll ask for if you have a code. You want to put in there DMI, and it does a couple things. One, it saves you an additional 50% off the annual price. There's a monthly available of $4.99, but the monthly doesn't give you access to the seminars system tools, which DMI is making exclusively available to you through their IMO. So you're going to want to use that DMI code, and if you're on this workshop, you want to use that DMI code. Whether if you're not involved with DMI, if you want to get involved with them, you can. But either way, use the code. That way they can track everything that's going on, and you have extra edge with that.
Yeah, pay the annual version of the agreement is the best. Absolutely, get most value out of that by far. Man, but thanks again, Steve. It's fantastic, and we're really happy to have you on board as a partner. Appreciate all the time, and we'll stop there, guys. Until next time, hopefully we can have you back, Steve, like in October sometime or something.
Absolutely, we'll look forward to it.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Tyrell. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you,
everybody that stayed on. Thank you.